In the dead of night at Hollow Hill Manor, a killer strikes without a sound, leaving a trail of secrets that only one man can unravel. Welcome to Poirot and the Silent Murder at Hollow Hill Manor, a gripping tale of mystery and deception. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and let the suspense unfold. If you're hooked already, hit subscribe. Your support means the world to us. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Shadows. The fog clung to the English countryside like a shroud as Hercule Poirot's train rattled toward Hollow Hill Manor. It was late autumn, the kind of season where the leaves whispered warnings before they fell, and the air carried a chill that seeped into your bones. Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective with his impeccably waxed moustache and piercing grey eyes, adjusted his overcoat, his little grey cells already buzzing with anticipation. He had received an urgent telegram from his old friend, Sir Reginald Hargrove, inviting him to the manor for what was described as a weekend of relaxation among esteemed company. But Poirot knew better. Such invitations often masked deeper troubles, like a calm sea hiding treacherous currents. As the train pulled into the small station, a chauffeur in a crisp uniform awaited, his face pale under the dim lamplight. "Monsieur Poirot, Sir Reginald sends his regards," the man said stiffly, loading Poirot's valise into a sleek black automobile. The drive wound through twisting lanes bordered by ancient oaks, their branches clawing at the sky. Poirot observed everything: the chauffeur's white-knuckled grip on the wheel, the distant silhouette of the manor rising like a Gothic sentinel against the twilight. "Tell me, mon ami," Poirot inquired in his precise, accented English, "is all well at the manor?" The chauffeur hesitated, then muttered, "As well as can be expected, sir," before falling silent. Upon arrival, the massive oak doors creaked open, revealing a grand foyer lit by flickering chandeliers. Sir Reginald, a portly man in his 60s with a ruddy complexion and a booming voice, greeted Poirot with a firm handshake. "Poirot, old chap, delighted you could make it. The guests are all assembled, quite the assortment, I assure you." He led Poirot into the drawing room, where a fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the wood-panelled walls adorned with family portraits that seemed to watch every move. The guests were a curious mix, each harbouring their own aura of intrigue. There was Lady Evelyn Hargrove, Sir Reginald's elegant wife, her diamond necklace sparkling as she sipped sherry, her eyes darting nervously. Beside her sat Dr. Elias Thorne, a sharp-featured physician with a reputation for experimental treatments, fiddling with his pocket watch. Miss Clara Beaumont, a young actress with cascading auburn hair and a flirtatious smile, lounged on a settee, chatting animatedly with Captain Victor Langford, a retired military man whose scarred face spoke of battles long past. Rounding out the group was Mr. Harold Winters, a shrewd businessman with slicked-back hair and a perpetual smirk, nursing a whiskey as he eyed the others appraisingly. Dinner that evening was a lavish affair in the dining hall, with silver candelabras illuminating plates of roast pheasant and fine wines. Conversation flowed like the claret, light at first, touching on London gossip and the latest scandals, but Poirot, ever observant, noted the undercurrents. Lady Evelyn's forced laughter, Dr. Thorne's evasive answers about his work, and a heated whisper between Captain Langford and Mr. Winters about some unsettled debt. Sir Reginald, at the head of the table, proposed a toast. "To old friends and new mysteries, may our weekend be unforgettable." As the clock struck midnight, the guests retired to their rooms, the manor settling into an uneasy quiet. Poirot, in his lavish guest suite overlooking the misty gardens, pondered the invitation's true purpose. Why had Sir Reginald summoned him so urgently? Was it mere coincidence that the group seemed rife with hidden tensions? Little did he know, the silence of the night would soon be shattered, not by noise, but by the absence of it. as death crept in on whisper-soft feet. And so, the stage was set at Hollow Hill Manor, where secrets lurked in every corner, waiting to be unveiled. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. The first hint of dawn had barely begun to pierce the heavy curtains when a piercing scream echoed through the corridors of Hollow Hill Manor, shattering the fragile peace. Poirot bolted upright in his bed, his sharp mind instantly alert. He slipped into his dressing gown and hurried out into the hallway, where flickering gas lamps cast long, eerie shadows. The scream had come from downstairs, raw and filled with terror, pulling him toward the source like a magnet. Rushing down the grand staircase, Poirot found the other guests gathering in the foyer, their faces pale and drawn in the dim light. Lady Evelyn stood at the centre, her hands clasped over her mouth, eyes wide with shock. She pointed toward the library door, which stood slightly ajar. "In there! Oh God, in there!" she stammered, her voice trembling. Sir Reginald pushed past her, his nightshirt dishevelled, and flung the door open wide. The room beyond was dimly lit by the embers of last night's fire, but it was enough to reveal the horror within. Slumped over the massive oak desk was Mr. Harold Winters, his body motionless, a pool of dark liquid spreading across the blotter beneath his head. No, not liquid, blood, Poirot realized as he stepped closer, his nose wrinkling at the metallic scent that hung in the air. Winters's eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, his face frozen in a grimace of surprise. A letter opener, its blade stained crimson, lay beside his limp hand. But Poirot's keen gaze noted immediately that the wound on Winter's throat was too precise, too deliberate for a self-inflicted act. This was no suicide. It was murder, cold and calculated. The guests crowded in behind him, gasping in unison. Captain Langford, his military training kicking in, barked orders to the servants who had arrived, bleary-eyed and frightened. "Seal the doors! No one leaves this house," he commanded, his scarred face twisting with authority. Dr. Thorne knelt beside the body, checking for a pulse, though it was clear to all that Winters was beyond help. "He's been dead for hours," the doctor muttered, his fingers probing the edges of the wound, throat slit cleanly. "No struggle, from what I can see. But how? The door was locked from the inside when we retired." Poirot circled the desk slowly, his small, neat steps deliberate as he absorbed every detail. The library was a haven of leather-bound books and polished wood, with tall windows overlooking the fog-shrouded gardens. One window was cracked open slightly, allowing a chill draught to stir the curtains. On the desk, amid scattered papers and an overturned inkwell, lay a half-finished letter in Winter's handwriting. "My dear Reginald, the matter we discussed cannot wait. The debt must be settled, or I fear—" The words trailed off into a smudge of ink, as if interrupted mid-sentence. Miss Clara Beaumont clutched at her robe, her auburn hair tousled from sleep. "Who could have done this? We were all asleep," she exclaimed, her actress's voice carrying a dramatic edge. Lady Evelyn leaned against her husband for support, whispering, "Harold was always so shrewd. Enemies in business, perhaps." Sir Reginald nodded grimly, his ruddy face ashen. He mentioned troubles in London, but nothing like this. "Poirot, thank heavens you're here. You must help us." Poirot stroked his moustache thoughtfully, his grey eyes scanning the room. "Mais oui, mon ami." Hercule Poirot does not turn away from such a puzzle. But first, we must establish the facts. When was Monsieur Winters last seen alive? The group exchanged glances. Captain Langford spoke up. After dinner, he said he had correspondence to attend to. I saw him enter the library around 11. The rest of us went to our rooms shortly after. Dr. Thorne rose from the body, wiping his hands on a handkerchief. No signs of forced entry. The key is still in the lock inside the door. Poirot nodded, moving to examine the window. The latch was undone, and faint scuff marks marred the sill outside, barely visible in the growing light. Perhaps an intruder from the grounds, he mused aloud. But the manor was isolated, surrounded by high walls and locked gates. How could an outsider have slipped in unnoticed? As the servants bustled about, fetching tea to steady nerves and alerting the local constable by telephone, Poirot began his subtle interrogations. He pulled Sir Reginald aside near the fireplace. "Tell me, what was this debt Monsieur Winters mentioned? Was there ill will between you?" Sir Reginald hesitated, glancing at his wife. "Nothing serious. An old investment gone sour. Harold was pressing for repayment, but we were on good terms, or so I thought." Next, Poirot approached Lady Evelyn, who sat on a chaise longue, fanning herself. "Madame, you seemed uneasy last evening. Did something trouble you about the guests?" She bit her lip, her diamonds catching the light. "Harold and Victor, Captain Langford, they argued quietly after dinner. Something about a shared past in the colonies. I didn't pry." Captain Langford, overhearing, interjected gruffly. "Ancient history. Winters owed me from a card game years ago. We settled it last night. No bad blood." But his eyes shifted away, avoiding Poirot's gaze. Miss Beaumont, lingering nearby, added, "I heard footsteps in the hall around midnight. Thought it was just the house settling. Dr. Thorne, packing his medical bag, offered his own observation. I couldn't sleep, insomnia from my work. Past the library door at 12:30. It was quiet, no light under the door." Poirot filed away each detail, his mind weaving connections like threads in a tapestry. By mid-morning, the constable arrived, a burly man named Inspector Graves, with a moustache rivaling Poirot's own and a no-nonsense demeanour. "Nasty business," he grunted, surveying the scene. "We'll need statements from everyone. No one leaves until we've sorted this." Poirot introduced himself, earning a respectful nod. "Heard of you, sir. Happy to have your insight, but I'll handle the official bits." As the group dispersed for a sombre breakfast in the dining room, though few had appetite, Poirot lingered in the library, alone with the body until the coroner could arrive. He examined Winter's pockets, a wallet with crisp banknotes, a gold watch stopped at 12:47, and a crumpled note in a feminine hand. "Meet me at midnight. We must talk. E. E for Evelyn, or perhaps someone else." Outside, the fog had lifted slightly, revealing manicured lawns and a distant greenhouse. Poirot stepped onto the terrace, noting muddy footprints leading from the garden path to the library window. Fresh, with a distinctive tread. Someone had indeed come from outside, but the gates were locked. As the chauffeur confirmed earlier, returning inside, Poirot overheard a hushed conversation in the hall between Miss Beaumont and Captain Langford. "You think it's about that old affair?" she whispered. "Hush, Clara, not here," he replied sharply. Poirot cleared his throat, startling them. "Pardon, but every whisper may hold a clue. What affair do you speak of?" Miss Beaumont flushed. "Nothing, monsieur. Just theatre gossip. Harold invested in one of my shows. It flopped." Langford nodded curtly and excused himself. Poirot watched him go, noting the captain's limp. Could it match the footprints? Lunch was a tense affair, with silver clinking against china, the only sound breaking the silence. Sir Reginald tried to lighten the mood with talk of the weather, but eyes darted suspiciously around the table. Lady Evelyn excused herself early, claiming a headache, while Dr. Thorne discussed poisons idly, drawing sharp looks. In the afternoon, Inspector Graves interviewed each guest in the study, with Poirot observing discreetly. Graves pressed hard on motives. Winter's business dealings had ruined some, including a rival who'd threatened him publicly. But all alibis seemed solid, or did they? Poirot noticed inconsistencies. Thorne's timeline shifted slightly, and Beaumont's room overlooked the garden path. As evening fell, the manor grew colder, lamps flickering as if sharing secrets. Poirot retired to his room briefly, sketching a rough map of the house and grounds on notepaper. The murder weapon, the letter opener, was from the desk set. An inside job, or planted to mislead? A knock at his door revealed Sir Reginald looking haggard. "Poirot, I must confess, Winters was blackmailing me, over an indiscretion years ago. But I didn't kill him." Poirot patted his arm. "The truth will emerge, mon ami. Patience." That night, as the house settled once more, Poirot lay awake, listening to the creaks and sighs of the old building. Footsteps padded softly in the hall. Someone else couldn't sleep. Slipping out, he followed the sound downstairs, toward the library now sealed with police tape. A shadow moved near the door. Dr. Thorne, his hand on the knob. "Doctor, a midnight stroll?" Poirot asked softly. Thorne jumped. "Just checking if I missed anything earlier." But his eyes held a flicker of fear. Poirot nodded, feigning understanding, but his suspicions deepened. The day had unveiled layers of deceit, each guest hiding pieces of a larger puzzle. As Poirot returned to bed, he sensed the killer growing restless, perhaps planning another move in this deadly game. The silence of Hollow Hill Manor hid more than one secret, and the night was far from over. Chapter 3. The tangled web of motives. The morning after the murder dawned grey and oppressive, the sky over Hollow Hill Manor heavy with the threat of rain. Hercule Poirot stood by his window, sipping a cup of strong black coffee brought by a trembling maid, his eyes tracing the garden path where those mysterious footprints had been found. His mind, as ever, was a whirlwind of deductions, piecing together the fragments of yesterday's revelations. The manor was no longer just a house. It was a chessboard, and each guest a piece with hidden moves. Today, he resolved, he would probe deeper, unraveling the motives that swirled like mist around the murder of Harold Winters. Downstairs, the dining room was subdued, the lavish breakfast spread untouched by most. The guests sat in uneasy silence, avoiding each other's gazes, the weight of Inspector Graves's ongoing investigation pressing on them all. Poirot entered quietly, his polished shoes clicking on the parquet floor, and took a seat opposite Miss Clara Beaumont, whose fingers toyed nervously with a silver spoon. He began with her, his voice gentle but probing. "Mademoiselle, you mentioned a failed theatrical venture with Monsieur Winters. Was there, perhaps, more to this disappointment than you shared?" Clara's green eyes flicked up, startled. "It was just business," she said quickly. "He backed my play, it flopped, and he lost money. He wasn't happy, but who is when investments go sour?" Poirot nodded, his moustache twitching slightly. He turned to Captain Langford, who was buttering toast with excessive focus. "And you, Capitaine, spoke of a card game debt with Winters. Settled, you said. Yet such matters can linger in the heart, no?" Langford's scarred cheek twitched. "Settled means settled, Poirot. I'm not one to hold grudges over a few pounds." But his grip on the knife tightened, betraying a flicker of unease. Across the table, Lady Evelyn sipped tea, her composure brittle. Poirot caught her eye. "Madame, the note in Winter's pocket signed E. Might it be yours?" Her cup clattered against its saucer. "Absolutely not. I barely knew the man beyond polite conversation." Sir Reginald, beside her, patted her hand. "Easy, my dear. Poirot's only doing his job." But his own eyes held a shadow of doubt, and Poirot noted it. Dr. Thorne, seated at the far end, cleared his throat. "If I may, Poirot, this speculation is pointless without evidence. The wound suggests a steady hand, perhaps a professional. An outsider, surely." His tone was clinical, but Poirot detected a hint of deflection. "Perhaps, Doctor," Poirot replied smoothly. "Yet the locked door and the footprints suggest someone familiar with the manor's ways." After breakfast, Poirot joined Inspector Graves in the study, where the constable was sifting through Winter's papers, confiscated from the library. "Found a ledger here," Graves grunted, sliding a leather-bound book toward Poirot. Winters kept meticulous records, debts, investments, even personal grudges. Poirot flipped through the pages, his eyes narrowing at entries detailing sums owed by Sir Reginald, a failed venture with Clara, and a cryptic note. "Langford, Calcutta, 1910, never forgets." Another entry mentioned Dr. Thorne's experimental clinic, funded partly by Winters, with a question mark beside results. "This ledger," Poirot murmured, "is a map of motives. But which road leads to murder?" Graves shrugged. "Could be any of them, or none. I'm checking the staff now. Maids, footmen, that twitchy chauffeur. Someone knows something. Poirot decided to explore the grounds, suspecting the outdoor clues held answers the house concealed. He donned his overcoat and stepped into the damp air, following the garden path to the greenhouse. The footprints from the library window led here, faint but unmistakable, stopping at the greenhouse door. Inside, amidst rows of orchids and ferns, he found a gardening tool, a small sharp pruning knife, its blade suspiciously clean, as if recently wiped. Nearby, a muddy boot lay discarded, its tread matching the prints outside. "Curieux," Poirot muttered. "Why leave such a clue unless to mislead?" Returning to the manor, he sought out the head gardener, a grizzled man named Jenkins, who was raking leaves near the stables. "Tell me, Monsieur Jenkins, who has access to the greenhouse at night?" Jenkins scratched his chin. "Only me and the groundskeeper, sir, but the door's never locked. Anyone could wander in." Poirot pressed further. "Did you see anyone near the library window last night?" Jenkins hesitated, then admitted. "Saw a figure moving in the fog round midnight. Couldn't make out who. Just a shadow, heading toward the house." Back inside, Poirot found Miss Beaumont in the drawing room, practicing lines from a script, her voice faltering. "Mademoiselle, a word," he said, sitting beside her. "The theatre is a world of illusion, yes, but here we need truth. What did you see when you heard footsteps at midnight?" Clara bit her lip. "I peeked out my window. Saw someone in a dark coat near the garden path, but the fog was thick. I thought it was just a servant." Poirot's next stop was Captain Langford, polishing his boots in the billiard room. "Capitaine, this Calcutta matter in Winter's ledger. What happened there?" Langford's jaw tightened. "A misunderstanding during my service. Winters spread rumours that cost me a promotion. I confronted him years ago. We moved past it, but his voice carried a bitter edge, and Poirot noted the calluses on his hands, hands capable of wielding a blade. Lady Evelyn was in the conservatory, arranging flowers with shaking hands. Poirot approached softly. "Madame, your husband spoke of Winter's blackmail. Was it only about his indiscretion, or yours as well?" Her face paled. "How dare you? Reginald's past is his own. I had no secrets with Harold." But her eyes darted to the door, as if fearing eavesdroppers. Dr. Thorne was in the library, now unsealed but guarded by a constable. He was examining books, claiming to search for medical references. Poirot watched him closely. "Doctor, your clinic. Winters funded it, yet questioned its results. Did he threaten to withdraw support?" Thorne's smile was tight. "He was impatient, nothing more. My work is sound." But his fingers fumbled with a book, betraying nerves. As evening approached, Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing room, where a fire roared against the chill. "Mes amis," he began, his voice calm but commanding. "A killer walks among us, hiding behind lies. Monsieur Winter's death was no random act. It was personal, planned, silent. I urge you, share what you know before the net tightens." The room fell silent, eyes shifting suspiciously. Clara clutched her shawl. Langford stared into the fire. Thorne adjusted his glasses. The Hargroves exchanged glances. Dinner was a grim affair, the empty chair at the table a stark reminder of death. Afterward, Poirot slipped into the library to re-examine the scene. He noticed a faint scratch on the desk near where the letter opener had lain. A mark not there yesterday. Someone had returned, perhaps to cover their tracks. He also found a single pearl, small and lustrous, caught in the rug's fringe. "A lady's pearl," he mused, thinking of Lady Evelyn's jewellery. Outside, rain began to fall, drumming against the windows. Poirot overheard a servant whispering to another about a locked attic room, rarely opened, where Sir Reginald kept old family papers. Intrigued, Poirot resolved to investigate it tomorrow. For now, he retired to his room, sketching new connections on his notepaper. The pearl, the pruning knife, the Calcutta grudge, the blackmail. Each clue was a thread, but the pattern remained elusive. As he blew out his candle, a floorboard creaked outside his door. He froze, listening. Someone lingered, then moved away. Poirot smiled faintly in the dark. The killer was restless, their web of deceit fraying. Tomorrow he would tug harder at those threads, drawing the truth closer to the light. Chapter 4. The locked attic and hidden truth's rain lashed against the windows of Hollow Hill Manor, the storm outside mirroring the tension within. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the weather, stood in the dimly lit hallway of the manor's upper floor, his eyes fixed on the heavy oak door leading to the attic. The servant's whisper about this locked room had lingered in his mind, a tantalizing clue in a house brimming with secrets. His little grey cells hummed with purpose. The attic, rarely visited, might hold the key to unravelling the silent murder of Harold Winters. Today, he would uncover what lay behind that door. Poirot approached Sir Reginald in the morning room, where the host was nursing a brandy despite the early hour. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his tone polite but firm, "I must request access to the attic. There are papers there, I understand, that may shed light on recent events." Sir Reginald's hand trembled slightly, splashing amber liquid onto his cuff. "The attic? Just old family records, Poirot. Nothing to do with this dreadful business." But his eyes betrayed unease, and after a moment's hesitation, he handed over a tarnished brass key. "Be quick about it. Evelyn doesn't like anyone poking about up there." Climbing the narrow staircase, Poirot felt the air grow colder, the manor's warmth fading with each step. The attic door creaked ominously as he turned the key, revealing a dusty chamber cluttered with trunks, faded portraits, and cobweb-draped furniture. A single dormer window let in a sliver of grey light, illuminating a desk piled with yellow documents. Poirot began his search, his gloved hands carefully sifting through letters and ledgers, each one a glimpse into the Hargrove family's past. Among the papers, he found a bundle of correspondence tied with a faded ribbon. The letters, dated over a decade ago, were addressed to Sir Reginald from a woman named Eliza, intimate, pleading, and hinting at a scandal that could ruin him. One letter mentioned a shared burden and a promise to keep silent, with a postscript. H knows. Could H be Harold Winters? Poirot's pulse quickened. Blackmail, as Sir Reginald had admitted, was a motive, but these letters suggested a deeper, more personal betrayal. Further digging uncovered a photograph, tucked inside a cracked frame, showing a younger Sir Reginald with a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Lady Evelyn, yet wasn't her. The woman's eyes held a quiet sorrow, and on the back, in looping script, was written, "Eliza, 1912. Poirot pocketed the photo, his mind racing. Was Eliza the E from the note found on Winter's body? And if so, how did she connect to the murder? Descending from the attic, Poirot sought out Lady Evelyn, who was in the parlour arranging roses with a distracted air. "Madame," he began, holding up the photograph, "who is Eliza?" Her face drained of colour, and she dropped a rose, its petals scattering. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "Eliza was my sister. She passed away years ago, a tragic accident." "Why do you ask?" Poirot noted her trembling hands. "A letter in the attic suggests she knew Monsieur Winters, perhaps intimately." Lady Evelyn's eyes flashed. "That's absurd. Eliza was troubled, yes, but Harold was no part of her life. Leave her memory alone, I beg you." Unconvinced, Poirot moved on to Captain Langford, whom he found in the smoking room, puffing on a cigar. "Capitaine, a question. Did you know a woman named Eliza, connected to the Hargroves or Winters?" Langford's cigar paused mid-air. "Eliza? Vaguely. Met her in Calcutta, back in 12. She was mixed up with some shady types, Winters included. Got herself into trouble and vanished." "Why?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Trouble, you say? The kind that follows a man like Winters to his grave." Langford snorted. "You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. That's ancient history." Next, Poirot cornered Dr. Thorne in the conservatory, where the physician was inspecting a potted fern with undue interest. "Doctor, your clinic," Did it ever treat a patient named Eliza, perhaps at Monsieur Winter's behest? Thorne's glasses slipped down his nose. Eliza? No, never. My work focuses on new treatments, not old scandals. But his voice lacked conviction, and Poirot pressed on. Yet Winters funded your work. Did he hold secrets over you as he did others? Thorne's jaw tightened. You're fishing, Poirot. I've nothing to hide. Miss Clara Beaumont was harder to pin down, flitting between rooms as if avoiding scrutiny. Poirot found her in the music room, idly plucking at a piano. Mademoiselle, a name Eliza. Does it stir any memories from your theatrical circles? Clara's fingers faltered on the keys. Eliza? I heard of an actress by that name years ago. Rumours said she ran off with a wealthy man, maybe Winters, but it's just gossip. Her smile was too bright, her eyes too evasive. By afternoon, the rain had eased, and Poirot joined Inspector Graves on the terrace, where the constable was examining the garden path's footprints, now blurred by the storm. Any luck, Poirot? Graves asked, chewing on a pipe. Poirot shook his head. Clues, yes, but clarity, no. The attic papers point to a woman, Eliza, tied to Winters and the Hargroves. Yet no one speaks plainly, Graves grunted. Found a groundskeeper who swears he locked the gates at 10 last night. If someone came from outside, they had a key. Or wings. Back inside, Poirot noticed a servant, a young maid named Maggie, lingering near the library door, her eyes red from crying. He approached gently. Mademoiselle Maggie, you seem distressed. Did you know Monsieur Winters well? She sniffed, twisting her apron. Not well, sir, but he was kind. Gave me a shilling once for extra work. Last night I saw him in the library, writing just before 11. He looked worried, kept looking at the window. Poirot's interest sharpened. Did you see anyone else nearby? Maggie hesitated. Only Dr. Thorne passing in the hall. He seemed in a hurry. As evening fell, the Manor's atmosphere grew heavier, the guests retreating to their rooms early. Poirot lingered in the drawing room, where a portrait of a young woman hung above the mantel, her features eerily similar to the photograph of Eliza. Sir Reginald entered, catching Poirot's gaze. My late sister-in-law, he said gruffly, Evelyn's twin. Tragic loss. Poirot nodded, but his mind churned. Twins? The plot thickened. Dinner was a strained affair, with stilted conversation and uneasy glances. Afterward, Poirot slipped into the library, drawn back to the scene of the crime. He examined the rug again, finding another pearl, identical to the first, near the fireplace. 2 pearls, careless for a killer or deliberate. He also noticed a faint smell of lavender, faint but distinct near the desk. Lady Evelyn wore lavender perfume, he recalled. Later, in his room, Poirot spread his notes across the desk, adding Eliza's name to his diagram. The letters, the photograph, the pearls, the lavender scent. Each pointed to a web of connections, with Winters at its centre. But why kill him now in this silent, precise way? And who had the skill to slit a throat so cleanly, leaving no trace of struggle? As midnight approached, a soft knock startled him. Opening the door, he found a folded note slipped underneath. Beware the shadows. They watch. No signature, but the handwriting matched the E from Winter's pocket. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. The killer was growing bold or desperate. Tomorrow, he would chase the shadows, and the truth would draw closer still. Chapter 5. The shadow moves. The storm had passed, leaving Hollow Hill Manor cloaked in a damp, uneasy calm. Hercule Poirot stood in the garden at dawn, his breath visible in the chilly air, his eyes fixed on the greenhouse where the pruning knife and muddy boot had been found. The mysterious note from last night, "Beware the shadows, they watch," lay folded in his pocket, its cryptic warning fueling his determination. The killer was no longer content to hide. They were taunting him, and Poirot sensed the game was shifting. Today he would follow the shadows, probing deeper into the web of lies surrounding Harold Winter's murder. Returning to the manor, Poirot found the breakfast room nearly empty, the guests' appetites dulled by fear. Only Captain Langford sat at the table, methodically slicing an apple with a pocket knife, his movements precise and practiced. Poirot sat opposite, his gaze steady. "Capitaine, your skill with a blade is impressive. Such precision could perhaps mirror the cut that ended Monsieur Winters's life." Langford's hand paused, his eyes narrowing. "Careful, Poirot. I've killed in war, not in libraries. Besides, my room's on the east wing, far from the crime." Poirot smiled thinly. "Distance means little when motives are close, non?" Next, Poirot sought Miss Clara Beaumont, who was pacing the conservatory, her auburn hair catching the weak morning light. "Mademoiselle, the note signed E. You are certain you know nothing of it? An actress, perhaps, playing a role in this drama." Clara's laugh was brittle. "I play roles on stage, Monsieur Poirot, not in murder. That note wasn't mine. Maybe Evelyn's. Her perfume's all over this house." Her words were casual, but her fingers twisted a handkerchief, betraying nerves. In the library, Poirot met Inspector Graves, who was cataloguing evidence with a constable. "Found something odd," Graves said, holding up a small vial from Winter's coat pocket, overlooked in the initial search. "Smells like medicine, bitter, chemical. Thorne might know." Poirot examined the vial, its label smudged but legible. "Digitalis, 0.1% solution. A heart medication, but in high doses, a poison." "Curieux," Poirot murmured. Did Winters have a heart condition? Or was this meant for another purpose? Seeking Dr. Thorne, Poirot found him in the billiard room, chalking a cue with studied calm. "Doctor, this digitalis, was it prescribed by you?" Thorne's glasses glinted as he leaned on the table. "Winters complained of palpitations weeks ago. I gave him a small dose, standard practice. That vial's mine, but I didn't administer it that night." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet you were seen near the library, hurrying, just before the murder. A coincidence?" Thorne's composure faltered. "I was fetching a book. Insomnia, as I said. Nothing more." Lady Evelyn was next, found in the drawing room, staring at the portrait of her supposed twin, Eliza. Poirot approached softly. "Madame, the lavender scent in the library. Yours, perhaps? And these pearls." He held up the two he'd found. "They match your necklace." Her hand flew to her throat, where the necklace hung, one clasp loose. I lost a few pearls recently. But I wasn't in the library that night. Someone must be framing me." Her voice cracked, and Poirot noted her desperation. Sir Reginald was in his study, poring over accounts. Poirot showed him the note from last night. "This handwriting, monsieur. It resembles the E from Winter's pocket. Your wife denies writing it. Could it be Eliza's?" Reginald's face darkened. "Eliza's dead, Poirot. You're chasing ghosts. Evelyn's no killer. She's too fragile." But his defense lacked conviction, and Poirot pressed on. "Then why did Winter's ledger mention Eliza and a scandal tied to you?" Reginald slammed a fist on the desk. "Enough. My past is private. Find the killer, not old wounds." By midday, Poirot revisited the greenhouse, this time noticing a faint trail of dried mud leading to a tool shed nearby. Inside, he found a coiled rope, its end frayed as if used recently. A climbing rope, perhaps, to scale the manor's walls? The shed's lock was broken, suggesting someone had entered hastily. He recalled the locked gates. Could an insider have used this rope to stage an outside entry? Back in the manor, Poirot overheard a tense exchange in the hall between Clara and Langford. "You should have burned it," Clara hissed. "Too risky now," Langford replied, glancing around. Poirot stepped forward, startling them. "Burned what, mes amis? Another clue, perhaps?" Clara flushed. "Just a letter from a fan. Nothing important." Langford nodded curtly and limped away, his cane tapping sharply. The maid, Maggie, approached Poirot later, her voice low. "Sir, I remembered something. That night, I saw a rope hanging from the library window like someone climbed down. It was gone by morning." Poirot thanked her, his mind racing. A rope, a knife, footprints. Someone had orchestrated a complex ruse. At luncheon, the atmosphere was stifling, the guests barely speaking. Poirot observed their hands. Langford's calloused, Thorn's steady, Clara's manicured, Evelyn's trembling. Any could wield a blade, but who had the cunning to plan a silent kill? He decided to test the waters. "Mes amis," he announced, "the killer left traces, pearls, a rope, a vial of poison." They grow careless. "Speak now, or the noose tightens." Silence followed, but eyes darted, betraying fear. After lunch, Poirot slipped into Dr. Thorne's room while the doctor was with Graves. A quick search revealed a medical journal. Bookmarked at an article on digitalis overdoses. Lethal in minutes. Silent, no struggle. Tucked inside was a receipt for a large order of the drug, dated a week ago. "Most interesting," Poirot whispered, replacing it carefully. As evening fell, he joined Graves in the study. "This digitalis," Poirot said. "Could it have weakened Winters before the blade struck?" Graves nodded. "Possible. No autopsy yet, but the coroner's coming tomorrow. If there's poison, we'll know." Poirot shared the rope discovery, and Graves frowned. "Sounds like someone staged an outsider's entry to throw us off." That night, Poirot sat by his window, sketching connections. Eliza's letters, the digitalis, the rope, the pearls. The killer had planned meticulously, yet left deliberate clues. Why? To frame another or to mock the investigation? A soft creak outside his door made him pause. He opened it to find another note. "Stop digging, or you're next." The same E handwriting. Poirot's smile was grim. The shadow was moving, but so was he, closer to the heart of the mystery. Chapter 6. The coroner's verdict. The morning sun struggled through the heavy clouds over Hollow Hill Manor, casting a pale light that did little to lift the gloom within. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, his eyes tracing the spot where Harold Winters had met his end. The bloodstains now cleaned, but the memory vivid. The threatening note from last night, "Stop digging, or you're next," burned in his mind, a challenge from a killer growing reckless. Today the coroner was due to arrive, and Poirot hoped the autopsy would reveal whether digitalis had played a role in the silent murder. His little grey cells buzzed with anticipation. Each new clue tightened the net around the culprit. The coroner, Dr. Margaret Wells, a brisk woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner, arrived just before noon, accompanied by a young assistant. She set up in a spare parlour, transformed into a makeshift examination room where Winter's body had been moved. Poirot joined Inspector Graves to observe, his presence welcomed with a curt nod. "Let's see what this poor sod can tell us," Dr. Wells said, pulling on gloves. As she worked, Poirot noted her efficiency, her scalpel moving with precision. After an hour, she stepped back, wiping her brow. "Interesting case. The throat wound was fatal, no doubt, but there's more. Traces of digitalis in his bloodstream, enough to slow his heart significantly before the blade struck. He'd have been too weak to fight back." Poirot's moustache twitched. So the poison ensured silence, and the blade ensured death. A meticulous plan. Graves scratched his chin. "Thorne's vial, then. He's got explaining to do." Dr. Wells added, "The digitalis would have taken effect within minutes. Administered, say, between 11 and midnight. Based on digestion." Poirot nodded, recalling Maggie's account of Winters looking worried in the library just before 11. Armed with this, Poirot sought Dr. Thorne in the morning room, where the physician was reading a newspaper, his face impassive. "Doctor, the coroner confirms digitalis in Winters' system, a lethal dose linked to your vial. Care to explain?" Thorne's glasses slipped slightly. "I told you I prescribed a small dose for his heart. Someone must have tampered with it. Stolen it from my bag, perhaps." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Yet your journal discusses overdoses, and you ordered a large quantity recently. A coincidence, no?" Thorne stood abruptly. "I'm a doctor, Poirot, not a poisoner. Check my bag if you doubt me." Poirot did just that, with Graves's permission, searching Thorne's room. The medical bag held standard supplies, but a small syringe was missing its needle, and a faint chemical smell lingered. Tucked in a drawer, he found a folded letter, unsigned. in the same E handwriting. The clinic must close. H knows too much. Poirot pocketed it discreetly, his suspicions deepening. Next, he approached Miss Clara Beaumont, who was in the music room, her fingers restless on the piano keys. "Mademoiselle, you suggested Lady Evelyn's perfume in the library. Did you also notice a chemical scent, perhaps from a syringe?" Clara's eyes widened. "A syringe? No, just the lavender, but I saw Dr. Thorne with a glass of wine for Winters at dinner. He said it was to calm his nerves." Poirot's mind raced. Wine, a perfect vehicle for poison. Captain Langford was in the billiard room, practicing shots with a steady hand. Poirot leaned against the doorway. "Capitaine, you and Winters shared wine at dinner. Did you see Dr. Thorne offer him a glass?" Langford's cue paused. "Thorne was fussing over him, yes. Said something about his health. I didn't think much of it." His tone was gruff, but his eyes flicked away, as if hiding something. Lady Evelyn was in the conservatory, pruning roses with a small knife that made Poirot pause. "Madame, your pearls. 2 found in the library, and your necklace is incomplete. Were you there that night, despite your claims?" Her hand trembled, nicking her finger. "I told you I lost those pearls days ago. Someone's using them against me." Poirot softened his tone. "And the note, signed E. Not yours, you say, but perhaps Eliza's. Your twin secrets seem to haunt this house." Evelyn's face crumpled. "Eliza's gone. Stop dragging her into this." Sir Reginald was harder to find, closeted in his study with the door locked. Poirot knocked firmly, and after a long pause, Reginald opened it, his face haggard. "Monsieur, the letter in Thorne's room mentions a clinic and Winter's knowledge. Was this tied to Eliza's scandal?" Reginald sank into a chair. "Eliza was reckless. She fell in with Winters in Calcutta, got pregnant, and he abandoned her. She died in Thorne's clinic during a procedure. I paid to keep it quiet. Winters started blackmailing me years later." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And Thorne? Did he share this burden?" Reginald nodded. "He swore it was an accident, but Winters threatened to expose him." By afternoon, Poirot joined Graves in the library, sharing the letter. "This E could be Eliza, or someone posing as her," Poirot mused. Graves frowned. "Eliza's dead, you said. So someone's playing a game. Evelyn, maybe, or even Clara, with her actress tricks." Poirot agreed. "Or Thorne, deflecting blame. The digitalis suggests medical knowledge." At dinner, the tension was palpable, the guests barely touching their food. Poirot watched closely. Thorne avoided wine. Clara's hands shook. Langford's limp seemed exaggerated. Evelyn's eyes were red. He stood, his voice cutting through the silence. "Mes amis, the coroner confirms poison preceded the blade. Someone in this room knew Winter's habits, his weaknesses. Speak, or the truth will find you." No one spoke, but the air crackled with fear. After dinner, Poirot revisited the tool shed, finding a scrap of fabric caught on a nail, dark blue, like Langford's coat. He tucked it away, then returned to the Manor, where Maggie, the maid, approached him nervously. "Sir, I found this in the laundry." She handed him a bloodied handkerchief, monogrammed with a V. Victor Langford's initial. "It was hidden in a pillowcase," she whispered. In his room, Poirot added the fabric and handkerchief to his growing collection of clues. The digitalis, the rope, the pearls, the notes, now this handkerchief. Each pointed to a different suspect, yet none completed the puzzle. He sketched a timeline. Wine at dinner, digitalis by 11, death by midnight, rope removed by morning. The killer had moved swiftly, silently, with an accomplice, perhaps. As midnight loomed, Poirot heard a faint rustle outside his window. Peering out, he saw a figure in a dark coat slipping toward the greenhouse, a glint of metal in their hand. He didn't follow, too risky, but noted the direction. The shadow was moving again, and Poirot knew the next move was his. Tomorrow, he would confront the suspects with these new clues, forcing the killer to reveal themselves. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. The air in Hollow Hill Manor was thick with suspicion, each creak of the floorboards amplifying the tension that gripped the house. Hercule Poirot stood in his room at dawn, his notes spread across the desk, the bloodied handkerchief with the V monogram, and the scrap of blue fabric beside them. The figure he'd seen last night, slipping toward the greenhouse with a glint of metal, lingered in his mind. A bold move by a killer feeling the pressure. Today, Poirot decided, he would confront the suspects with his findings, forcing the shadow to step into the light. His little grey cells were aligning the clues, and the truth was tantalizingly close. Poirot began the day in the dining room, where the guests gathered for a breakfast no one seemed eager to eat. He stood, his small frame commanding attention, and held up the handkerchief. Mes amis, this was found in the laundry, stained with blood, marked with a V. Captain Langford, it bears your initial. Care to explain? The room froze. Langford's scarred face tightened, his hand gripping his cane. That's mine, yes, but I cut my hand shaving days ago. Someone must have taken it from my room. His voice was steady, but his eyes darted to Clara, who looked away. Poirot turned to Dr. Thorne, holding up the letter found in his room. Doctor, this note, in the E handwriting, speaks of a clinic and Winter's knowledge. You claimed no secrets, yet this suggests otherwise. Did Winters threaten your reputation? Thorne adjusted his glasses, his voice cool. I told you, Winters funded my work. That note's a forgery. Someone's trying to pin this on me. Poirot's smile was thin. A forgery, perhaps, but the digitalis in Winter's blood points to a medical mind. Next, he faced Lady Evelyn, producing the 2 pearls. Madame, these were found in the library, matching your necklace. You claim they were lost, yet their placement suggests intent. Were you there when Winters died? Evelyn's hand flew to her throat, her voice sharp. I've said it before, I wasn't there. Someone's framing me, planting those pearls. Sir Reginald stood, his face flushed. Leave her alone, Poirot. She's no murderer. But his defence wavered, and Poirot noted the doubt in his eyes. Miss Clara Beaumont was last, her auburn hair pulled back tightly, her face pale. Mademoiselle, you saw Dr. Thorne offer Winter's wine, and you spoke of burning a letter with Captain Langford. What are you hiding? Clara's hands clenched. I told you it was a fan letter. Nothing to do with this. I'm an actress, not a schemer. But her voice trembled, and Poirot pressed on. Yet you saw a figure in the garden that night. Why not raise the alarm? Clara faltered. I thought it was nothing. Inspector Graves, observing from the corner, stepped forward. Enough dancing around, Poirot. Let's search their rooms properly. Might turn up more than handkerchiefs. Poirot agreed, and Graves organised a systematic search, starting with Langford's quarters. In a locked drawer, they found a small knife, its blade clean but similar in size to the pruning knife from the greenhouse. Langford protested. That's for carving wood, not throats. I keep it for hobbies. Poirot noted the knife's weight. Light, precise, deadly in skilled hands. In Thorne's room, they found a hidden compartment in his medical bag, containing a vial of digitalis concentrate, far stronger than the one prescribed. Thorne's face paled. That's for research, not murder. Someone planted it. Graves bagged it for evidence, his expression skeptical. Clara's room yielded a torn script page with a handwritten note in the margin. Meet me at 11:30. Library. The handwriting wasn't the E script, but it was suspicious. Clara claimed it was from a rehearsal, but her eyes betrayed fear. Evelyn's room held a surprise. A lavender-scented scarf tucked in a wardrobe, with a faint bloodstain. This isn't mine, she cried when confronted. Someone's been in my room. Sir Reginald's search revealed nothing new, but his nervous pacing suggested he was hiding more than papers. By afternoon, Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing room, the fire casting flickering shadows on their strained faces. Mes amis, he began, his voice calm but piercing. The clues mount. A poisoned glass, a rope, a knife, pearls, a handkerchief, Notes signed E. The killer is among us, and their plan unravels. I propose a reconstruction of the night. Let us walk through the hours before winter's death. Perhaps memory will jog truth. The guests exchanged uneasy glances but agreed under Graves's watchful eye. They began in the dining room, reenacting the dinner. Clara recalled Thorne handing Winters a glass of wine, which Thorne denied preparing. Langford admitted to lingering near the library door. Checking the locks, he claimed. Evelyn said she retired early, but Maggie, the maid, hesitated before confirming she saw Evelyn in the hall near midnight, heading downstairs. I thought she was fetching water, Maggie said, glancing nervously at her mistress. Moving to the library, Poirot positioned each guest where they claimed to be. He noted the window's latch, easily opened from inside or out, and the rope marks on the sill, now faint. Someone entered or exited here, he said, eyeing Langford's cane, which could conceal a climbing hook. Langford scoffed, but his limp seemed less pronounced today. As the reenactment ended, a shout came from the hall. Jenkins, the gardener, burst in, holding a muddy glove found near the tool shed. Found this just now, sir. Matches the boot from the greenhouse. The glove was small, possibly a woman's. Evelyn gasped, but Clara's face went white. Not mine, Clara whispered, unprompted. Dinner that evening was a silent ordeal, the guests' eyes darting like trapped animals. Poirot watched, noting Thorne's avoidance of wine, Langford's tight grip on his cane, Clara's forced smiles, Evelyn's trembling hands. Sir Reginald excused himself early, claiming fatigue. Afterward, Poirot slipped into the garden, retracing the figure's path from last night. Near the greenhouse, he found a cigarette butt, still fresh, with a faint trace of lipstick. Clara smoked, he recalled, but so did Evelyn. In his room, Poirot updated his diagram, adding the glove, the cigarette, the knife. The clues pointed in circles. Thorne's poison, Langford's handkerchief, Evelyn's pearls, Clara's note. Was one the mastermind, or were they entangled in a shared guilt? The E-note suggested a single hand, but the motives, blackmail, revenge, fear, interwove them all. As midnight struck, a soft thud echoed from the attic above. Poirot grabbed his flashlight and crept upstairs, the key still in his pocket. The attic door was ajar, and inside a trunk lay open, its contents scattered. A single letter fluttered to the floor, in Eliza's handwriting. H will ruin us all. Before Poirot could read more, a shadow moved behind him, and a cold breeze brushed his neck. He spun, but the figure was gone, leaving only the echo of footsteps descending the stairs. The killer was desperate now, their moves erratic. Poirot clutched the letter, his resolve hardening. Tomorrow he would lay a trap, using the clues to force the shadow into the open. Chapter 8. The trap is set. The dawn broke over Hollow Hill Manor with an eerie stillness, the gardens shrouded in mist that clung to the ground like a conspirator's cloak. Hercule Poirot stood by his window, the latest letter, H will ruin us all, tucked safely in his pocket, its words echoing in his mind. The shadow that had fled the attic last night was a sign. The killer was rattled, their carefully woven plan fraying under his relentless pursuit. The clues, digitalis, pearls, a bloodied handkerchief, a rope, a glove, a cigarette butt, formed a mosaic, but the final piece eluded him. Today Poirot resolved to set a trap, using the killer's own fear to draw them out. His little grey cells thrummed with precision, ready to orchestrate the decisive move in this deadly game. Poirot began the morning in the library, where he met Inspector Graves, who was sipping tea and reviewing notes. Graves, mon ami, Poirot said, his voice low. The killer grows bold, leaving notes, scattering clues. I propose we stage a revelation tonight. Announce we've found the murder weapon, the pruning knife, with fingerprints. It's a lie, but it will flush them out. Graves raised an eyebrow but nodded. Risky, but I'm game. Let's say we're sending it to London for analysis. That'll stir the pot. Poirot smiled. Exactement. Panic reveals truth. To prepare, Poirot revisited the greenhouse, examining the spot where he'd found the cigarette butt. The lipstick trace was faint but distinct. A shade Clara favoured, though Evelyn's vanity held similar hues. He searched further, finding a hidden nook behind a stack of pots, where a small tin box lay buried in dirt. Inside was a single key, rusted but functional, marked with a tiny H. Could it belong to the Manor's gates, or another locked secret? Poirot pocketed it, his mind racing. The key felt like a missing link, tying the outdoor clues to the house. Back inside, he sought Maggie, the maid, in the servants' quarters, where she was polishing silver. Mademoiselle Maggie, this key, do you recognize it? Her eyes widened. That's to the old gatehouse, sir, near the west wall. It's been locked for years since Miss Eliza's time. Poirot's pulse quickened. Eliza, was it used often? Maggie nodded. She'd meet folk there, private-like. Mr. Winters visited once, I heard. Poirot thanked her, his suspicions deepening. The gatehouse might hold more of Eliza's secrets. Next, he confronted Captain Langford in the smoking room, where the captain was cleaning his pipe, his cane propped nearby. Capitaine, your handkerchief stained with blood was hidden, and this fabric, Poirot held up the blue scrap, matches your coat. Were you in the tool shed, perhaps climbing to the library? Langford's jaw tightened. I told you that handkerchief was stolen, and my coat's common enough. Check the staff's uniforms. As for climbing, my leg's no good for that. He tapped his cane, but Poirot noticed its tip, metal and sharp, could serve as a hook for a rope. Dr. Thorne was in the conservatory, inspecting plants with an air of distraction. Poirot showed him the tin box. Doctor, this was hidden in the greenhouse, near your supposed research. Did you hide it to conceal a key tied to Winter's past? Thorne's glasses glinted. Nonsense. I've no use for keys or gatehouses. My work's above board. But his fingers twitched, and Poirot pressed. Yet your digitalis order was excessive, and a syringe is missing. Were you planning more than treatment? Thorne snapped. You're grasping, Poirot. I'm no killer. Miss Clara Beaumont was in the music room, her fingers faltering on the piano. Poirot held up the cigarette butt. Mademoiselle, this was found near the greenhouse, with lipstick like yours. Were you there meeting someone? Clara's laugh was shaky. I smoke, yes, but so does half the house. I was in my room all night after dinner. Poirot leaned closer. And the note in your script, meet me at 11:30. You claim it's rehearsal, but it aligns with Winter's final moments. Her face paled. It's just a coincidence. I'm not part of this. Lady Evelyn was in the parlour, arranging flowers with trembling hands. Poirot showed her the key. Madame, this opens the gatehouse tied to your sister Eliza. Did Winters meet her there, stirring old wounds? Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Eliza's dead, Poirot. That gatehouse was her refuge, yes, but it's been locked since her accident. I've no key. Her voice broke, but Poirot noted her necklace, now missing another pearl, as if it were unravelling with her composure. Sir Reginald was in his study, poring over ledgers. Poirot confronted him with the letter from the attic. Monsieur, this says H will ruin us all. Winters blackmailed you over Eliza's death. Did you silence him to protect your name? Reginald's face reddened. I paid him to keep quiet, yes, but I didn't kill him. Eliza's death was a tragedy, not my crime. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet you hid her letters, locked away truths. Who else knew? Reginald looked away. Only Evelyn, and maybe Thorne. By afternoon, Poirot and Graves planned the evening's trap. They gathered the guests in the drawing room, the fire casting long shadows on the walls. Graves stood, his voice gruff. We found the murder weapon, a pruning knife from the greenhouse with clear fingerprints. It's off to London for analysis tomorrow. The killer's days are numbered. The room tensed. Langford gripped his cane. Thorne's glasses slipped. Clara's hands shook. Evelyn gasped. Reginald stared at the floor. After the announcement, Poirot lingered in the hall, watching the guests disperse. Clara slipped outside, glancing nervously toward the greenhouse. Langford headed upstairs, his limp pronounced. Thorne excused himself to check his bag, while Evelyn clung to Reginald, whispering urgently. Poirot followed Clara at a distance, her silhouette vanishing into the mist. Near the greenhouse, she knelt, digging frantically, then froze as if sensing him. She fled back to the house, leaving a small cloth bundle behind. Poirot retrieved it, a third pearl wrapped in a note. E knows. Dinner was a tense affair, the guests barely speaking. Poirot watched their every move. Thorne's avoidance of wine, Langford's steady hands, Clara's forced calm, Evelyn's red eyes. Afterward, he slipped to the gatehouse using the key. The door creaked open, revealing a dusty room with a single chair and a locked box. Forcing it open, he found a diary, Eliza's, filled with entries about Winter's betrayal, Thorne's failed procedure, and a vow to expose them. The last page read, "If I die, they'll pay." Returning to the manor, Poirot found Graves waiting. "Clara was seen near the tool shed again," Graves said. "And Thorne's been asking about the knife." Poirot nodded. "The trap works. They're moving." In his room, he added the diary to his clues, its pages confirming motives but not the hand that struck. The E-notes, the pearls, the digitalis, all pointed to a conspiracy, perhaps more than one killer. As midnight approached, a scream shattered the silence, coming from the library. Poirot raced downstairs, finding the door ajar. Inside, a candle flickered, illuminating a new note on the desk. "You were warned." The window was open, a rope dangling outside. Footsteps echoed in the garden, fading into the night. The killer had struck again, not with a blade, but with fear, daring Poirot to follow. Chapter 9. The Unravelling. The scream that pierced the night still echoed in Hercule Poirot's ears as he stood in the library, the flickering candle casting ghostly shadows across the walls of Hollow Hill Manor. The new note, "You were warned," lay on the desk, its bold E taunting him, while the open window and dangling rope suggested the killer's latest attempt to mislead. The trap he and Inspector Graves had set had worked too well, stirring the culprit into action, but not yet revealing their face. Poirot's little grey cells whirred, connecting the diary, the key, the pearls, and the digitalis into a pattern that was finally taking shape. Tonight, he would push harder, forcing the killer to make a fatal mistake. Poirot began the morning by gathering Inspector Graves in the study, the air heavy with the scent of old books and tension. "Mon ami," he said, holding up the latest note. "The killer is desperate, leaving this to intimidate us. But desperation breeds errors. We must search the gatehouse again. It holds more secrets." Graves nodded, rubbing his moustache. "Agreed, and I've got men watching the grounds tonight. No one slips out again." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Bon. Let us also re-examine the suspect's movements after last night's scream." They started with the gatehouse, using the key Poirot had found. The dusty room was as he'd left it, but a closer inspection revealed a loose floorboard under the chair. Lifting it, Poirot found a hidden compartment containing a locket with a faded photograph of Eliza and a man who resembled a younger Winters, their faces close, almost intimate. Tucked beside it was a medical report, signed by Dr. Thorne, detailing Eliza's death. Complications from procedure, 1912. The report noted an overdose of sedative, ruled accidental but with a question mark in the margin. "Thorne's handiwork," Poirot murmured. But was it truly an accident? Back at the manor, Poirot confronted Dr. Thorne in the conservatory, where the physician was watering plants with a forced calm. "Doctor, this report," Poirot said, producing the document, "suggests negligence in Eliza's death. Did Winters threaten to expose you, forcing your hand?" Thorne's face went ashen, his watering can slipping. That was years ago! The sedative was standard. I wasn't to blame. Winters twisted it for blackmail, but I didn't kill him. His voice rose, drawing a curious glance from a passing maid. Poirot pressed further. Yet your digitalis was in his blood, and your syringe is missing. Who else had access? Thorne stammered. Anyone could have taken it. My bag's not locked. Next, Poirot found Captain Langford in the billiard room, polishing his cane's metal tip. Capitaine, this locket links Winters to Eliza in the gatehouse. You knew her in Calcutta. Did you also know of their affair? Langford's scarred cheek twitched. I saw them together once, yes. She was smitten, he was a cad. After she died, I warned him to stay clear of the Hargroves. That's all. Poirot held up the blue fabric scrap. This was found near the tool shed, near your handkerchief. Were you there staging an escape? Langford's eyes flashed. I've no need for tool sheds or ropes. My leg's bad. You've seen it. But Poirot noted the cane's tip, sharp enough to anchor a rope. Miss Clara Beaumont was in the drawing room, sketching nervously on a notepad. Poirot showed her the locket. Mademoiselle, you mentioned Eliza as an actress. Did you know of her connection to Winters, perhaps through theatrical gossip? Clara's pencil snapped. I heard rumours, yes. She was involved with a rich man, maybe Winters, but I wasn't part of their world. Poirot leaned closer. Yet you were near the greenhouse last night digging. What did you hide? Clara's eyes darted. I lost an earring, that's all. I wasn't hiding anything. But her sketch showed a rope and window. A subconscious slip. Lady Evelyn was in the parlour, her hands wringing a handkerchief. Poirot held up the locket. Madame, your sister's image with Winters. Proof of their bond. Did her death drive you to revenge? Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Eliza loved him, and he ruined her. I hated him for it, but I didn't kill him. I swear it. Poirot softened his tone. The pearls, the lavender scent. Someone uses your belongings to frame you. Who might wish you harm? Evelyn shook her head. I don't know. Clara, perhaps. She's always watching me. Sir Reginald was in the morning room, staring out at the rain-soaked gardens. Poirot showed him the medical report. Monsieur, this confirms Winters' blackmail over Eliza's death. Did you act to protect your family? Reginald's shoulders slumped. I paid him for years to keep quiet. Eliza's death broke Evelyn. She was her twin. But murder? No, I couldn't. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet you hid the gatehouse key, knowing its secrets. Reginald sighed. I wanted to forget, not kill. By afternoon, Poirot and Graves planned a second trap. They gathered the guests in the library, where the murder had occurred, the atmosphere charged with fear. Poirot stood by the desk, his voice clear. Mes amis, the gatehouse has revealed its secrets. A locket, a report, proof of Winters' blackmail. The killer used digitalis, a rope and a blade, but their greatest weapon is deception. Tonight we lock all doors and windows. No one leaves. The truth will emerge. The guests shifted uneasily. Thorne's glasses fogged. Langford's cane tapped. Clara's hands trembled. Evelyn clutched Reginald's arm. After the announcement, Poirot watched closely. Thorne slipped upstairs claiming a headache. Clara lingered near the library window, her eyes on the garden. Langford excused himself to the smoking room, his limp less pronounced. Evelyn and Reginald whispered urgently, then parted. Poirot followed Thorne discreetly, catching him slipping a small vial into his pocket. For my nerves, Thorne muttered when spotted. But Poirot noted the vial's shape, similar to the digitalis concentrate. At dinner, the silence was oppressive, broken only by the clink of silver. Poirot observed. Thorne avoided liquids. Langford's hands were steady. Clara barely ate. Evelyn's eyes were red. Afterward, he slipped to the gatehouse again, finding fresh footprints in the mud, small like the glove. Someone had returned. Inside, a drawer in the locked box was now empty, as if evidence had been removed. Returning to the manor, Poirot found Maggie in the hall, her face pale. Sir, I saw someone in a dark coat near the gatehouse just now. They dropped this. She handed him a cigarette case engraved with CB, Clara Beaumont's initials. Poirot thanked her, his mind racing. Was Clara the shadow or another pawn? In his room, Poirot updated his diagram, connecting the locket, the report, the cigarette case. The E-notes suggested a single hand, but the clues implicated multiple players. Thorne's poison, Langford's strength, Clara's stealth, Evelyn's motive. Was it a conspiracy or a clever frame? He set a final trap. A note slipped under each suspect's door in the E handwriting, forged by his own hand. Meet me at the gatehouse midnight. All will be revealed. As midnight neared, Poirot hid near the gatehouse, Graves stationed nearby. Footsteps approached, a figure in a dark coat, face obscured. They hesitated, then entered, clutching a knife. Poirot signalled Graves, who moved to intercept. A struggle ensued, and the figure's hood fell, revealing a face that stunned them both. The trap had sprung, but the truth was more twisted than Poirot had imagined. Chapter 10. The Truth Revealed. The mist hung low over Hollow Hill Manor, wrapping the estate in a ghostly veil as Hercule Poirot stood near the gatehouse, his heart pounding from the struggle moments ago. The figure in the dark coat, unmasked by Inspector Graves's swift intervention, was none other than Miss Clara Beaumont, her auburn hair dishevelled, her eyes wild with fear. The knife she clutched fell to the ground, glinting in the moonlight. Poirot's trap had worked, but the revelation of Clara's identity was only the beginning. His little grey cells had woven the clues, digitalis, pearls, a rope, a handkerchief, a locket, notes signed E, into a tapestry of deceit. And now, in the final act, he would unveil the full truth of Harold Winters's silent murder. The guests were summoned to the drawing room, and Poirot prepared to lay bare the killer's intricate scheme. The drawing room was a cauldron of tension, the fire crackling as the guests assembled under the watchful eyes of Graves and his constables. Clara sat, pale and silent, her hands cuffed, her cigarette case and the forged E-note on the table before her. Captain Langford gripped his cane. Dr. Thorne adjusted his glasses. Lady Evelyn clung to Sir Reginald, and the servants hovered nervously at the edges. Poirot stood at the centre, his small frame commanding the room, his moustache perfectly symmetrical. "Mes amis," he began, his voice steady and clear. The murder of Harold Winters was a masterpiece of deception, but Hercule Poirot sees through the shadows. Tonight, the truth emerges. He paced slowly, holding up the locket from the gatehouse. This locket, found with Eliza's diary, reveals her love for Winters, a love betrayed in Calcutta, 1912. Eliza, Lady Evelyn's twin, fell pregnant, and Winters abandoned her. She sought help from Dr. Thorne's clinic, where a procedure, botched by an overdose of sedative, ended her life. Thorne shifted uncomfortably, but Poirot continued. Winters used this tragedy to blackmail Sir Reginald, who paid to protect his family's name, and Dr. Thorne, whose career hung in the balance. But someone else knew, a person who wove this knowledge into a deadly plan. Poirot turned to Clara, producing the cigarette case. "Mademoiselle Beaumont, you were no mere actress in this drama. You knew Eliza, not just from gossip, but personally. Her diary mentions a friend, C, who shared her dreams of the stage. You were that friend, were you not?" Clara's lips trembled, but she remained silent. Poirot pressed on. "You came to this manor not by chance, but with purpose. Winter's presence here, his blackmail, stirred your old grief. You vowed revenge." He held up the vial of digitalis. The coroner confirmed digitalis in Winter's blood, administered through wine at dinner, a poison from Dr. Thorne's supply. But you, mademoiselle, had access. You saw Thorne offer Winters a glass, and you tampered with it, knowing his heart condition. The poison weakened him, ensuring no struggle when you struck. Thorne gasped, but Poirot raised a hand. "Doctor, you were negligent in Eliza's death, but not the killer. Your guilt made you a perfect scapegoat." Poirot turned to the pearls. These from Lady Evelyn's necklace were planted in the library to cast suspicion on her. Madame, you were framed, your lavender scent and lost pearls used to mislead. But you too hid truths. Your sister's shame weighed on you, non? Evelyn sobbed, nodding. I hated Winters for what he did to Eliza, but I couldn't kill. Next, he faced Langford, holding the bloodied handkerchief. Capitaine, your handkerchief and the blue fabric suggested your involvement, but your limp, real, yet exaggerated at times, kept you from climbing ropes. You knew of Winter's betrayal in Calcutta and despised him, but your role was peripheral. You suspected Clara, did you not, and tried to protect her by hiding evidence? Langford's jaw clenched. I cared for her, yes. I burned a letter she wrote, but I didn't know she'd go this far. Poirot produced the rope and glove. The rope and footprints were a ruse, staged to suggest an outsider. Mademoiselle Clara, you used the gatehouse key, stolen from Sir Reginald's study, to access the tool shed. You climbed to the library window, entered silently, and slit Winter's throat with the pruning knife. Your actress's grace masking your intent. The glove, small and feminine, was yours, dropped carelessly. He held up the E notes. These, signed E, were your masterstroke. You forged Eliza's handwriting, learned from her diary to sow confusion, pointing to Evelyn or even a ghost. The notes to me, beware the shadows, you were warned, were your attempt to scare me off, but they betrayed your fear. Last night, you returned to the gatehouse to destroy the diary, but I was ready. Clara's composure broke, her voice a whisper. He deserved it. Winters ruined Eliza, left her to die, and laughed about it. I found her diary in London, learned everything. When I heard he'd be here, I planned it, every detail. The poison, the knife, the pearls to frame Evelyn, the rope to fool you. I wanted him to suffer. Tears streamed down her face, but her eyes held no remorse. Graves stepped forward, his voice gruff. That's a confession, Miss Beaumont. You're under arrest. As the constables led her away, the room exhaled, the tension shattering like glass. Sir Reginald buried his face in his hands. Evelyn wept. Thorne stared blankly, and Langford looked away, guilt etching his scarred face. Poirot addressed the group one last time. The truth, mes amis, is a painful mirror, but it sets us free. Winter's greed and cruelty sowed the seeds of his demise, but justice, not vengeance, must prevail. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. If you've enjoyed this tale of mystery, subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world. Comment below with your thoughts, and stay tuned for more. As Poirot stepped into the foggy night, the manor behind him seemed to sigh, its secrets finally laid bare. The silent murder was solved, but the echoes of Eliza's tragedy would linger, a reminder of the shadows that hide in every heart.